Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 3rd meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. I'll call this meeting to order, and I will begin with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Thank you, and now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As usual, this meeting is being recorded and will be played on public access TV. Is there anyone else recording this meeting? Okay, so you're also being recorded. You're being recorded twice. Okay. We will now have the clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Richard Anderson.
Here.
Cheryl Andrews. Here. Ronald Bergstrom.
Here.
Leo Kukunis.
Here.
Christopher Kanega.
Here.
James Killian.
Here.
Marcia King. Here. Thomas Lynch.
Here.
Teresa Martin. Deborah McCutcheon. Here. Spiro Mitrakostas.
Here.
John Oman. Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise.
Here.
Julia Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum present with 91.12% of the delegates present, 8.88% absent.
Thank you. We'll now need a approval of the calendar of business.
Move approval of the calendar of business.
Okay, I have one minor change. Under report from the clerk, it says report on proposed ordinance 11-07. That should be the approval of the minutes of that meeting, not the report, because we'll get the report when the ordinance is, when the assembly convenes and the ordinance is put in front of the assembly. So, with that change,
As amended.
As amended. Okay. Anything else? If all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I'll now need approval of the Journal of July 20th, 2011.
Move approval of the Journal of July 20th, 2011.
Okay, any additions or corrections on that?
Mr. Speaker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have one small correction on page 1 under the Committee of the Whole. Fourth line down, it has Speaker Bergstrom talking, and that actually is me.
Okay. Okay. I hope you didn't say anything, too.
No.
Okay.
Outrageous.
Oh, I need a second on that correction.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now approval of...
One abstention.
Oh, one abstention.
Yes.
Okay, now I need a motion to the approval of the amended minutes.
Move approval of the amended minutes of...
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And 2 abstentions.
Abstain too.
Yeah. We now have communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners. You see the chair of the commissioners here.
Well, a cheerful good afternoon to one and all. It's been a while since we visited together. I hope everybody's having a good summer. I know I am. Today, at the County Commissioners meeting, we had 3 main items that we had looked at. One was a set of resolutions that we were asked to vote on. We did not endorse them with regard to CVEC and the Cape Light Compact. However, we are planning to pursue a forum request. On the special committee on governance that we've asked Rob O'Leary and Henri Rauschenbach to work on, they appeared, and they're in the process of finishing their list, which will be made available to us, they say, shortly. They intend to convene after Labor Day and then have at least three regional meetings, and their hope is to finish by the end of the year in a timely way so that if any legislative changes are proposed that would go in January, which they felt would be timely based upon their personal experience with the legislative process. And then we also had a communication on an increase in CMed charges from a proposed increase in charges from Sheriff Cummings. We moved to set up a subcommittee with Pat Flynn and the sheriff and others that would be collected to look at these and come back and make a report within, I think we're looking at 3 or 4 weeks to see what recommendation that they would make. I want to point out that I had been to Portland, Oregon for the National Association of County Officials meeting, and it was quite a good meeting because it's an opportunity to do some lobbying for things that we're interested in. But one of the more important outcomes that came out of that is some information that I received with regard to a program that is being run by the Army and the military community to identify soldiers who have been deployed and have the community adopt them in terms of having like a sponsor, so that when they come back from their deployment, they would have someone to let's say to communicate with. What we found out from the Suicide Prevention Coalition and the evidence of the amount of soldiers returning who have been let's say candidates or let's say or have been doing some suicide ideation is that when the force, which is 40% reserves or National Guard, is deployed, when they return to a community. They don't return to a base. So there's some need, and I emphasize how important this is, there's some need for the community to have a contact that can identify and recognize the problems that that they have faced and give them some way of ventilating it. Because they have been reporting that they return and no one really understands or knows what they've been through, that has contributed to a level of depression. So this is something that I think deserves our attention, and I hope when you're talking to the members of your towns that you point out the opportunity to participate in this, and the web page would be www.army.mil/community, and all of these programs that are identified, are there. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. With that, the RTA. I suppose you should talk about that, Mr. Chair or Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Well, the RTA and its administrator, Tom Cahir, has announced the award of a new contract for the operators of the buses. The RTA is prescribed by law not to operate the buses directly. We hire a contractor, one of quite a few national firms that do this sort of thing. And we've had a contractor in place for a few years, and we've got 4 submittals. We reviewed them. And I think that one of the submittals, and it was the opinion of a 5-member board, of which I was one of the members, along with the administrator and some of the staff there, that one of the submittals rose above the rest, and we had quite an elaborate and formal process. So starting in September 1st, I think, or October 1st, I don't know, so we'll be having new operators, and they promised that they're going to operate the system as well and better than it has already been operated, and be more responsive to the ridership. And also, we are involved right now in the process of computerizing just about everything that goes on in the bus service. So we know where everybody is, and we know where the buses are in real time, and you can track them as you can right now on the computer, and you can ticket, remotely. So it's quite complicated, but the history of the RTA over the last couple of years has been a good one. Our ridership has increased by 20%, and I think that this new contract is going to be result in even greater improvements. So. Thank you, Bill.
Well, other than the fact that Tom Kay did a wonderful job of due diligence of presenting all that information to us the other day. So with that...
Do we have any questions for it? Yes.
Well, first I want to also tell the members that on their desk they might have gotten this thing that says proposed resolutions for Barnstable County Commission, a copy of it. I attended the commissioners meeting today. This was the resolution that they voted down 3-0. It was submitted to them, not being submitted to us. I just wanted people to see it by Save Our Seashore. That's the name of it. So that's what this is. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that that's what that was. I do have a question about the special commission, because I was there today, and I know that Henri said they had like 25 names, 15 had accepted, but they didn't submit you a list. Obviously, we have nothing to do with it, but once you get the list, will you be submitting it to us so that we can see who's on it, or?
I'd be happy to share whatever they give us.
I like sharing.
Sharing's good.
Sharing's good. Thank you.
Any other questions for the commissioners? Yes, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just was curious when you talked about how you voted down these proposed resolutions, and you said you would be sponsoring a forum. Is there something more you could say? I didn't quite understand. Maybe you could explain that a little bit.
Sure. Since we had sent a letter some time ago asking have a forum whereby they would describe what their operational activities are, and although the resolutions were not endorsed, there is still some interest in supporting what we have asked for before. So, although I have every confidence that they will respond, and as a matter of fact, Charlie McLaughlin, who is the chair of the CVEC, was in the audience, reinforced that, I believe, in his in his not presentation, but when he was sharing information with us, that that should be coming up soon, but it does rely upon Cape Light Compact and CVEC responding. Now, speaking for Cape Light Compact, since I am the chair, I am looking forward to getting some information from that Maggie is putting together with regard to some details, and at our next meeting, I believe that we will have a progress report on when we would be ready to go forward. But the intention is to have some type of a combination among or between the Cape Light Compact and CVEC. We all look forward to getting that behind us, and I believe that based upon what I would call the positive attitude with regard to all of the people that are involved who want to have some opportunity to have a general description and presentation on this, I think that that's moving forward.
Yeah, Paul?
If you know, or do you know whether this forum will provide an opportunity for the public to ask questions?
I believe that that question was raised, and I believe that that's the intent. However, Charlie McLaughlin did say that one of the caveats is that because CVEC is set up as a quasi-utility, and because in the open meeting law description for those items that are under the obligation to maintain themselves as items that are part of a bidding process, not unlike the process that goes for union negotiations. I think it's item 8 under executive session reasons that say that things that have to do with electric utilities are exempt. And so he said with that one caveat, and he would do his best to make sure that all of the other areas that he was allowed to share, that he intended to do that.
Okay. Anybody else? Bill, I have one question for you. You said that you're going to talk to Sheriff Cummings about increasing the charge for the CMED.
No. I said that he told us that he was intending to increase the charge for CMED.
Does that mean they're going to charge the people they transport, or does that mean there's going to be an additional charge to us or to somebody else?
The way it was phrased in the letter is it's an increase of $6.53 per carry, I think. And one of the things that has to be addressed is what exactly does that mean? What are the lines of authority? Who can this be done? There are many questions that were raised by by other members of the public safety community, and we believe that since Pat Flynn has spent a lot of time and energy pursuing this, that she would be the right person to sort of organize the subcommittee have a discussion, and then make a report to us, which we will share with you.
The reason I bring this up is because I checked my email today, and I got a Murray mail from the Senate President. She listed all the appropriations that were made and some of the things that would affect us here in the Cape. And one thing she mentioned was $100,000 restored to the sheriff's budget, specifically in her email for CMed. But we know that the governor also restored some funding to the sheriff previously where it wasn't specifically designated as CMed. So there's some confusion as what he's getting the money for. I mean, I'm not accusing him of anything wrong, but is that enough to cover it? And are we obliged to cover any of it, or is it totally in his ballpark now? Is that the question?
Those are all questions that the subcommittee should address.
Okay. Thank you for being so informative today, Bill. I appreciate it. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Where the heck are we? Communications from public officials. Communications from members of the public. Do we have any communications from members of the public? Recognize a member of the public. Please get up to the microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Preston Ribnick, and I'm from Wellfleet, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak this afternoon. I have some notes here that I'll refer to them briefly. This has been a most disappointing day for me. I attended the Cape Cod Commissioners meeting this morning, the County Commissioners meeting this morning, thanks, because after approximately 15 weeks of attending those meetings, and the purpose of attending them was continually requesting to have agenda items placed on their agenda. Finally, on this morning's meetings, they actually did place the agenda items that we've been requesting on the agenda. So at 9:35 this morning, the commissioners addressed this agenda item. I'd like to read it to you. 9:35 a.m. Discussion with Bob Troy, County Counsel, on resolutions submitted by Save Our Seashore with regard to CVEC and Cape Light Compact. Please note there will be no public discussion. No public discussion after 15 weeks of attending their meetings. And this is a county government that on its website proclaims it is an open and proactive form of government. No opportunities for people who've attended 15 consecutive weeks to at least to speak to the three commissioners on the resolutions, none. That was at 9:30 or 9:45 this morning. And since then, I've spent most of the rest of the day thinking about that vote. And what I've been thinking about is, why continue asking these questions? Why take my time and all these other people week after week after week after week, now month after month? And I really struggle with it. Why not throw the towel and say, they're not going to deal with it. It's not, obviously they don't think it's important. And what I concluded at the end of my reflections today was that these are important questions, and we have a right to have the information provided. Every member of the public does. It's our money being debated and discussed in secret sessions and voted in secret sessions, and we have a right to ask why. How can elected officials be so calloused and so dismissive of their constituents? And what did we request? Why the weeks of pleading with them? We requested of them the same as we request the day of the assembly. We ask for information from these two public agencies. That's what we're asking for, information. I can tell you one thing. We cannot get it from the agencies. That we know after the months and months of persuading and pursuing every avenue available to members of the public. And so we turn first to the county commissioners. And today we finally receive their answers. They close the door to transparent and open and accountable government. That's what's happened this morning. So now, as our last hope, I respectfully ask of this assembly today to act to appoint a committee that simply and appropriately asks both CLC and CVEC to provide information that should be available to all members of the public. We do not request, and we made it very clear in every way possible, a public forum that the chairman of CLC and the chairman of the commissioners has put forth this afternoon. We've attended those public forums. Maybe you have too. We have specific questions. Those questions should be answered. We request that the committee that would be created by the Assembly to hold open and transparent meetings where members of the public can participate, where the public can ask questions of these two public agencies. And I'll be honest with you, for the life of me, I don't know why anyone would object to openness and transparency and accountability in county government. Frankly, I believe we need this in all levels of our government. So for me, the day began in a most personally disappointing manner. And I sincerely hope that by your positive vote this afternoon, it will end in a far more encouraging manner for me, the other members of the public who have been diligently bringing this to the attention of the county government for weeks and months, and for all the residents of Barnstable County. Mr. Speaker, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, I see another hand up. First, Mr. Bibler, and then behind him.
Good afternoon, Eric Bibler, President of Save Our Seashore. I'll try to be brief. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to address you briefly. I think this is some important business that you're taking up today. And I just want to review very quickly, because it seems like the waters have been muddied quite a bit here over the last couple of weeks, a few things that I think it would be wise to keep in mind. First of all, I just would like to reiterate what we've asked for. We've asked for the formation of a committee. We feel that a committee will be a better instrument to be able to get to the bottom of some of these questions than the full assembly, because I think you're restricted by some formal rules that might make it more difficult for you to do that. So we've asked for the formation of a committee that will conduct an inquiry. Our request for an inquiry has sort of been spun as a desire for a Spanish Inquisition or some sort of effort to dictate, to these entities, and that is not what we've asked for. We've asked you to issue a letter. We've asked for that committee to consider the issues and issue a letter. We're very happy to provide you. I know you're very tired of receiving long emails, but I've already put together a short list of questions. We're very happy to provide you with a list, a very brief list of the pertinent questions and the documents that we think would be relevant to providing the support for the answers to those questions that we think the committee should consider, and that the committee should in turn issue to CVEC and CLC and ask for written answers to those questions. I think there's a certain discipline of asking for written response. Then once that reply is received, we'd like you to provide an opportunity, or this committee to provide an opportunity for CVEC or representatives of CVEC and CLC to come before the public and you, frankly, and to be able to address any questions you might have about those replies, and to address the public's questions that they might have about those replies, because we have found that in many cases the replies that we have heard at public forums or in other venues have not really addressed those questions and have not been sufficient to answer the questions that were asked. I just want to say briefly what we have not asked, which it sometimes seems has become the topic of discussion. We've not asked for this assembly or for the county commissioners to exert any control over these entities, any direct control. We have not asked for the assembly or the county commissioners to dictate policies to them. We've not asked for the assembly to tell the town of Brewster what to do and what not to do. And we have not asked you to invite either CLC or CVEC or both to give a PowerPoint presentation and to present you with an organizational chart or to explain their charters. In fact, on several occasions, we've specifically asked you not to do that. That's what they've offered to do, and that's not sufficient to our purposes. We also haven't asked you to ask them to come before the Assembly and answer whatever questions you may have for them. We've actually been quite complete in outlining several specific questions we think are pertinent, and those are the questions we wanted to answer. I just want to say in closing that, you know, the analysis of any policy problem, the evaluation of any issue begins with the process of obtaining information. You can't analyze any problem without having the information that pertains to it. We're stuck in this step where we can't get basic information. We can't get annual reports and financial reports and you know, rationale for why certain decisions were taken by public entities. And without the information, you certainly can't draw any conclusions without getting the information. The county commissioners this morning, I think Preston may have meant to say, to clarify, at one point we had tried to frame some of these questions as specific resolutions and just asked them, vote them either way, vote them up, vote them down, but consider these resolutions. They had promised us that they would consider each of these resolutions and vote them, you know, however they felt was appropriate. And instead, this morning, they decided not to consider any of them. And this whole debate has somehow turned into a debate over the scope and limits of the authority of the county commissioners and the Assembly. So, in our view, that has sidestepped the problem. That has amounted to nothing less than changing the subject to something that we didn't ask for and something that is not basic to the problem. We don't have this information. We've been trying to get it for a long time, and the purpose, despite all the other misdirections of the debate into questions of whether our motives are proper or laudable or whether you agree with them, questions of whether or not CVEC and CLC are good citizens, do they do good work for the community, are the employees good employees, should we appreciate the hard work that they do, the scope and limits of the authority. These are all questions that are extraneous to what we've asked for. So we don't have this information. The county commissioners don't have this information. You don't have this information. It has not been publicly disclosed. And without this information, no one on God's green earth can make a reasoned judgment about some of these issues that we've raised. I believe that today, if you don't act, you'll be saying, in effect, that it is of no consequence to you that the public does not have this information. And you will be saying that it is of no consequence to you that you do not have this information. And I realize that you don't direct these agencies, you don't control them, but Barnstable County government was instrumental in the creation of these agencies to pursue specific goals for the benefit of all the citizens of Barnstable County. You created them. You have some responsibility for them, and you certainly should have some desire to understand as well as possible what it is they do. And we're not talking, by the way, about union negotiations or personnel matters or these sorts of things that are properly entitled to secrecy. So I just want to be very clear on that point. Thank you for all the time you've already spent considering this. With all due respect, there are two resolutions proposed on your agenda today, and one of them, in our view, is really nothing more than a face-saving gesture, and it doesn't accomplish anything that we've asked for. We hope you will reject it. The other one comes much closer to the mark of beginning this process of accumulating information, and we are happy to supply you with a much more condensed version of what we think would be appropriate for you to ask for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see another hand up.
James Rogers, Sandwich. I too was at the commissioners' meeting this morning. when the commissioners decided not to consider the 5 resolutions that were presented to them. I had my hand up at that point, but I was not recognized. And my point was, could you not please consider these resolutions individually rather than taking one simple up or down vote? I think there was not an awful lot of thought or discussion that went into rejecting these resolutions, and I hope you will more seriously consider the resolution, especially the one by Mr. Kukunis that is before you today. Thank you.
See another hand in the back, gentlemen. I have to say in advance, complaining to us about the activities of the commissioners is not going to get you anywhere. We have nothing to say about what they do. We'd rather you limit your comments to what we have to say. I'm not referring to your comments, but, you know.
I don't mean to criticize
Yeah.
you. I'm only asking that you take these issues seriously.
Yeah, we take
unlike
them
what has been
seriously.
done at the commissions.
Thank you for your time. My name is Mitch Rellin. I live in Brewster. And as president of the Brewster Citizens for Responsible Energy, I represent a couple of dozen of residents in Brewster that have been concerned about the plans that CVEC has proposed to the town. As you probably know, Brewster is on the verge of partnering with CVEC if the likely appeal to the Department of Public Utilities goes forth and they are successful. We are looking at the possibility of partnering with CVEC for the next 20, perhaps 25 years. We have been trying, people in Brewster have been trying to get questions answered about CVEC. And when there have been presentations by CVEC, what we've been faced with are 3x5 cards. We are to write our questions down, have them submitted, and then hope that they are picked to be answered. Oftentimes they are not. The questions that usually are picked are those that they are more than happy to answer. So we really have not been helped by any kind of presentation, and we really haven't had any opportunity to ask substantive questions and to follow them up. So, and if the residents of Brewster, and indeed other towns, if the turbines that are proposed go into effect, towns such as Orleans and Harwich will be affected as well, since it's pretty much on the borders. We need some information. The citizens of Brewster need information. And I urge you to vote positively the resolution to develop the committee and try to get some information so that as Brewster or any other town on the Cape move forward, they can do so intelligently with some background information. Thank you.
Yes, over here and then in the back. You're hiding behind the pillar. Here. I see you ducking back and forth. We don't get too repetitive here, so.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Bowen. I will try very hard not to be repetitive. I'm president of Windwise Cape Cod and president of Harwich Neighborhood Alliance. And I'm really here today to respond to some statements that were made at your last meeting that I didn't take the time to respond to. And that is that our constant attendance at meetings with the county commissioners and with the assembly throughout the winter, spring, and now summer are not about Brewster. It's not, as was stated at the last meeting by Mr. Lewis, an attempt to stop the Brewster project. Actually, our concerns about finances in particular and conflicts of interest go back a couple of years. And it was brought to the forefront really due to the investigatory strength of Mr. Bibler and the perseverance of Mr. Rebnick. And it really, I think Preston said to me at one point, if the issue in Brewster were totally resolved, if Mr. Lewis decided one day that he would not go for turbines in Brewster, we would still be looking for the answers to these questions. And I also would like to make a couple of comments about Mr. Bibler, who travels here from Connecticut, and I know he's been maligned for that. And I know he's been kind of set aside as unimportant and marginalized because he is not a Cape Codder. I've lived on the Cape for 31 years, and I started coming here the summer I was born. I loved the Cape as much as I do now before I was a full-time resident. And I believe that Mr. Bibler feels the same way. It's kind of unusual that right now we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the National Seashore. And when that was dedicated, I believe there were many wonderful speeches about how Cape Cod belonged to the whole country. And if we turn our back on the people who come here every summer and the people who have family here, as Mr. Bibler does, I think that we're making a huge mistake. So please consider the resolution. Please provide us with answers. And I also believe that the resolution by Mr. Kukunis will support the issues more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Green, is it whoever that is back there? I can't see.
My name is Kathy Sherman. I'm also from Brewster. I'm only speaking as a citizen and ratepayer. I've sent you guys an email, but not to everybody. Independent of how you vote today, I hope you will read it because it expresses concerns about the compact and CVEC in our energy future that transcend some of the issues that have brought us to ask questions. There's a lot of questions in there. I do think that you would be a body to be constituting a subcommittee to be asking some of those questions on behalf of the ratepayers, not only the charges that we pay towards that go into Mass Renewable Energy Trust. I think we need to be thinking about outsourcing a lot of decisions from Cape Cod to consultants from off Cape Cod to lawyers from off Cape Cod. And so please do look at the attachments. And one of the new materials that has come forward from CVEC and CLC is a PowerPoint. And it outlines one of the missions of the compact is transparency and rate. And that's what a lot of people, no matter how they feel about the particular project in Brewster, want to know. We support renewable energy, but proportionate on the order of the regulations that you passed previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further comment from the public, then no, there is. I can't. Can I see something? Oh, another buddy behind the pole. Okay.
We line up on these seats. I don't know. It's some weird human tendency. My name is Joyce Flynn. I'm from South Yarmouth, and I let you know for purposes of potential conflict of interest that I've been on the Yarmouth Energy Committee for 4 years, and as of 3 months ago, I became a board member at Cape Light Compact. That wasn't an accident. It was the logical tendency of my work on energy conservation and energy issues. I've come to the meetings in which we considered this. I've also come to the ones at which the Assembly examined the discussions about the Cape Cod Commission guidelines. I'm really concerned with what's happening to the image of Cape Light Compact. I certainly, as a board member, have been very polite to every member in this room. Every person in this room but one who came to our meetings was polite in return. That one, we didn't feel there was much we could do about, and we did have to go to executive session, and we made that very clear. It's awkward with Cape Light Compact, and I'm not speaking for the compact. I'm only speaking as Joyce here. But it seems to me it's awkward if we're held up as the usual government entity, like maybe your local school board in terms of transparency, because we're an electrical aggregator, and we have to keep things that involve electrical rates under wraps until we announce them, because we, in fact, are dealing with competitors in a way that I guess your local school board might be dealing with depending on your district, Cape Cod Academy or Falmouth Academy, but it's not the same. And I think one of the things that's awkward about this is where we've been doing our job well and getting rates lower and lower and lower, that's an area in which we do have to have executive sessions, because that's a question of competitive negotiation. We've weighed in on the recent NSTAR merger, and we've weighed in on a lot of things that have made Cape Cod rates lower. But to do that for legal things involving mergers and for rate setting, we absolutely have to be in executive session. I think that the people who are involved in working on the Cape Light Compact, and I would say also probably CVEC, are very concerned about Cape Cod and very concerned about Cape Cod in the long term, because we've looked at the science and we do see that we're losing square feet of Cape Cod because of global warming, because of fossil fuel generation every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Good afternoon. I really hadn't planned to speak, but at some point you have to at least set some records straight. If people have a complaint as it relates to executive sessions, as it relates to something, the open meeting law, they have an avenue to go. They file a complaint with the Attorney General. If there's any feeling that people are using the executive session incorrectly, then they go to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General will issue some type of opinion on that. In Brewster, and regardless of what anybody says, but notice what one thing Ms. Bowen said, that if Mr. Lewis and his colleagues decided to walk away from and not have the turbines, then they would still want answers. Remember, it's only if we walk away from not want turbines. This is a very difficult process. I would very much support the resolution that's been put forward by the delegate from Falmouth, because I don't like the idea, and I think it's presumptuous on the part of Mr. Bibler and Mr. Ribnick and other people to call for what is being called in the press as an inquiry or a probe of two organizations within the county. If you have questions for them and you want them to explain things that are not proprietary, you have every right to do that, obviously. I'm not sure why you need an inquiry or a probe when you just don't get the people, bring them, come to a room, or do a resolution like the delegate from Falmouth has done, and have them come in and ask them questions. But if you're going to subject them to the bullying tactics of 5,000 different questions and how they operate and what they do and when they do it, what their mind says, then you're destroying the ability for people to act. And those of you who have operated, whether in the public sector or the private sector, there comes a time when your methods and your ability to act can be compromised by the constant badgering and bullying of people who are only interested in one thing. and that's to see not only the Brewster project go down, but to see CVEC and the Cape Light Compact go down.
Okay, are there any other comments from the public? Thank you. The Assembly will now convene, and we'll begin with the discussion on proposed Ordinance 11-07 to add to the county's operating budget for fiscal year 2012 as enacted in Ordinance number 11-06, which is the county budget, by making supplemental appropriations for the fiscal year 2012. This was looked at by Human Services? Was looked at by Finance. Tom, do you want to give a report on that? Oh, okay. Marcia?
Yeah, I'll do it, a short report since I'm the one who proposed this. Finance Committee had a public hearing and voted 3-0 to pass this forward. Just a brief, for people who've been here for a while, the Overnight Hospitalities has come before the Assembly quite a few times with always great results. I believe everybody received a one-page write-up from their July 2011. It's a progress report, and on a personal note, I think they do a great job. I would hope everybody here would support them for the amount of money over the years that we have given them and helped them. They have done an amazing job with the small amount of funds that they get. And I guess if they continues like this, I will every year submit an ordinance because I think they do a great job. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to put Ordinance 1107 for $12,500 on the floor. You second me?
Okay.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Okay. I forgot we had a train on Cape Cod. Is there any comments on this? Do we have anybody want to comment here? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I support this, and I think it's a great organization. I think they do a lot with a very little of taxpayer money, so I'm in favor of it. On a longer-term issue, I would like to see some way that there is some feedback on what happens with the money, and particularly if it's going to be on an ongoing basis. And I just heard a willingness to continue submitting ordinances into the future. And if we're going to do it that way, and if we face the prospect of having other organizations and entities ask for money, I think it would be in our interest to set up a way to get the financial information back on the other end or halfway through the year or some other way that would be helpful to us in subsequent years. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Cheryl?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Forgive me, as you know, I'm a member of the freshman class, so I'm learning as I go. I didn't expect that this would be an ongoing annual request from the delegate from Mashpee, so now I'm a little more confused. Is there something about this organization that's different from all the others that we fund that causes them to be outside the normal budget?
You're asking me? I mean,
My statement is based on, this is the second year in a row, and there is no necessarily any formal way of doing this. Citizens can petition the Assembly. Assembly members can put in ordinances. I know years ago we did set up the Human Services Advisory Council, which is just an advisory council, and when we had money, they were intimately involved. We had surplus money, let me rephrase that. And if you go back and look at the records, we gave out quite a bit of money. I just think that for what they have done over the years, that for the small amount of money, when I was approached, when they came forward and said they were short. I just think they do a great job, and for the short amount of money. If, as the member from Orleans said, if other members come forward, other groups come forward, I have no problem in talking to them. I completely agree with what Chris said about having, and I'm sure that they would be happy to come forward at the end of their fiscal year or whenever we want them to talk about what they do, how they handle the money, and what they have spent it on. But there's no formal way of getting them in the budget. I mean, I know like the Arts Foundation's in the budget, I would love to see them in, but if that does not come to pass, we have usually 10% is held back in surplus, which is over $200,000, a little over $200,000. I think 12.5 is not unreasonable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You want to follow up on that?
Yes, please.
Sure.
I don't think you answered my question. What is it about this organization that's different from the others that keeps this from being part of the annual budget? That's the part I didn't understand.
There's nothing different. They just made a request. Other organizations are not necessarily part of it. They go through the Human Services. They may be, other organizations don't get money from this, for the county unless they ask. This group just asked, and I entertained their motion and took it upon myself to submit it. That's all.
Leo, do you want to address this?
A couple of things for the record. At the Finance Committee, the organization did supply us with a to-date balance statement and financial records. If you get a chance to review the minutes, you will see that we reference those documents, and I believe that they will be available if the full assembly wants to see them. Their fiscal year ends, I believe it's October. This money will carry them through to the end of their fiscal year. One of the things, and this will help answer the delegate's question on regards in keeping tabs with this, in doing it this way, originally last year I was very upset at this process, and I did want to know why they weren't in the budget. After being here for a little while, I find that sometimes there's other ways that are better to do things. This organization only asks for this amount of money to get them through the end of their fiscal year because they have been unable to raise it through donations and through other avenues that they normally get money from. So with that said, and I even asked the question, next year if you get a benefactor that gives you enough money, you won't be looking for anything from us. And the answer was no, we won't, because their whole idea is just to provide the services that they have and to hopefully again meet their budget program. So that's why I supported it, one reason. The second reason was I knew it was coming. I was aware of this back in early or late spring because they had contacted one of the delegates and said that they were going to be looking for something. It is a little different and a little out of the norm as far as our process goes, but there is no downside to it. As quite frankly, I think that if we're going to be doing some investigating on, or I'll use the term, what's the one we're using for the other thing there for transparency, but for some inquiries on how our money is being spent, we may want to even look at some of the organizations that are actually in the budget to see if we're getting a bang for our buck. These people did provide, again, an in-depth budget and balance sheet at our Finance Committee meeting, and I certainly was pleased with it. And again, I think it will be made available to any member that wants it.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, I might add a little bit to that. I mean, I think this is an example of an agency that, the Assembly in this instance is saying, we think they're a priority for funding. Through the budget, we got the priorities that the county commissioners had set. And in the course of that, they were funding suicide prevention coordinators. They were funding in the housing arena $40,000 for a coordinator who would help administer a grant. They were funding, and
we questioned at the Finance Committee, we questioned each of these things. When this agency came before the Finance Committee during the budgetary process, they were looking for direct services. They go right out there and they have a record, and it's really a regional record where they look at homeless from up and down the Cape. They provide housing throughout the Cape, and it seemed to fit a regional model that for a small amount of money, as other delegates have already pointed out, we can get a lot of services for a very, very needy population. So while it wasn't high on the Human Services Department's agenda, I think it's been something that this Assembly has tried to do over the years when we had funding, and I think when the delegate from Mashpee came forward saying she was willing to do this, I think many of us thought it was a good idea, and that's why it's before us now.
Yes. Mrs. Eastham there.
Hi. Well, first I want to say I am supporting it for two reasons. First, I think the money is wisely spent, and second, I think the Finance Committee looked at it, and to some degree we have to trust that they looked at it and made a wise choice. That said, I'm really uncomfortable with the process because it feels to me that we are setting up an alternative budget process for organizations that run out of funding midway through the year, and that makes me very uncomfortable. So I would just ask that even as we approve it, we informally, perhaps in the budget process this year, somehow push back and try to avoid this happening over and over again, because you really can see a scenario. Anybody can come forth. I mean, anybody, any organization can come forth and ask us for money. So think about that. Do we want to be in that position ongoing? And that's why it makes me uncomfortable. I do think this money is spent wisely. I think it's a terrific place to put resources, so I am supporting it. But I do have that caveat that I want to share.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Spiro.
We passed a budget a couple of months ago, which included $250,000 in increased salaries and wages. We've officially been debating $12,500 for longer now than we did that increase. I don't think we need to belabor the point that we have organizations that have need. They're coming before public bodies and asking for assistance, and I'd like to move the question.
Okay, move. I don't know if we move the question here. We can do it anyway if nobody has anything to say anyway, but we usually don't have this. I just like before you move anything, I'd like to answer the question by the delegate from Provincetown. A few years ago, the county had a budget surplus because of excess.
Will you move towards the microphone, please?
Yeah, okay. The county had a budget surplus because of excess revenues from the Registry of Deeds. And at that time, they gave out individual grants to human service organizations as they came forward and requested them. And that got to be a pretty messy process. I think at one point it was up to $500,000. And the reason it was a messy process is it became almost a competition. Somebody would come in and say, we're so-and-so, we need X amount, and so-and-so. And so finally the Assembly, in its wisdom, decided to set up a process by which they could analyze the needs of the Cape as a whole and recognize those organizations which fulfilled each one of those needs, so there wouldn't be, a duplication of effort and so on. So they set up the Human Service Advisory Council, and they charged them and the then head of the Human Service Agency here on the Cape with presenting to the Assembly and to the commissioners their estimate of where the money would be best spent based on the available funds. All right. The Human Services Advisory Council, which was comprised of many of the human service organizations around the Cape, internally got together and they said, look, we're all going to adhere to this process. We're all going to, get our heads together and decide how the money is going to be spent that would be fair to everybody. And so they sort of made a commitment that they weren't going to go back to the old process where they would run in front of us, in front of the commissioners, and ask for individual appropriations. Now, as Marcia says, they can do that anyway. I mean, that was their decision not to do that. And if they decide to come to us, we're not obliged to honor that. We take the requests as this request and this ordinance individually, But, and I guess this is a long way of saying is that, yes, this is a good organization, and yes, they certainly do deserve the support of the county, but we have to think long and hard from this point forward as to whether or not we're going to abandon the process that we set up, even though we have no money now. And if we do abandon the process, what are we going to charge the Human Services Advisory Council with? In other words, we don't want to lose the connection between the county government and the Human Service Advisory Council, which is a branch of county government in which we have charged to advise us on what resources to use. Now, we do appropriate money for the Human Services Department, but it was a decision when we ran out of the surplus funds that we would fund that department for their direct outreach into the community and not simply as a pass-through to other organizations. So that's where we are. I just put that out there so that everyone understands exactly why this debate is where it is. And I'll have to make a decision whether I'm going to support this or not in the next couple seconds. Okay. Now, anyone else have any questions on that? Or?
Let's vote.
Let's vote. Okay. Sure.
Sorry, I know you want to vote, and I know what the vote's going to do, but you're educating me, and I appreciate it because I have to educate the folks in my town that work in nonprofits that are short of money this year, and I need to explain to them why one group got to come in and do this when other groups didn't. So I appreciate very much the explanation, and it has nothing to do with the amount of money at all. It has to do with understanding the process, which I used to feel embarrassed that I didn't understand the process, but the longer I've been sitting at this table, it's apparent that a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah, but a lot of company, yes.
The last comment was about surplus. You explained that a lot of the history here...
Point of order, Speaker. This has nothing to do with, we're now talking about a process, and I don't think it's appropriate. We have a motion on the floor. We actually had a motion to move the question.
This relates to the motion, your resolution.
It's a wonderful discussion, but I think it's inappropriate for what we're at.
Okay, then let me specifically...
Vote on a motion and move on.
If I can specifically question the resolution, then...
We're not going to vote on the motion and move on. This is relevant. Whether we bypass normal procedures that we've set up is relevant to the question of whether we vote on this $12,000. Okay?
Thank you, and I'll be very specific in my question. That has to do with the funding source then. You talked about surpluses in the past. This is not related to any surplus at all then, correct? This is a reserve transfer? No. Okay.
It's not a designated surplus.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we ready to vote? Mr. Clerk will call the roll.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Cheryl Andrews. Ronald Bergstrom.
Yes.
Leo Kukunis.
Yes.
Christopher Kanega.
Yes.
James Killian.
Yes.
Marcia King.
Yes.
Thomas Lynch.
Yes.
Teresa Martin.
Yes.
Deborah McCutcheon.
Yes.
Spiro Mitrokostas.
Yes.
Paul Pilcher.
Yes.
Anthony Scalise.
Yes.
Julia Taylor.
No.
Mr. Speaker, proposed ordinance 1107 passes with 77.45% of the delegates voting yes, 15.97 voting no, 6.58 absent.
Thank you. Okay, now we move on to proposed resolution from Delegate Taylor regarding CVEC, CLC, and county government, and I'll turn this over to Michelle.
Well, since I proposed the resolution because I thought it might be helpful to the people who've spoken requesting it and they don't want it, I'm not interested in pursuing it. One question, though, that I have, at one time there was a discussion, at least by email, from Mr. Bibler and maybe others, that they had requested the documents that presumably had the answers that they wanted, that the documents were available but only at a price per page, which was a very high price. I can't remember what the price was. Does that sound familiar to people? It occurred to me we might save a lot of time and trouble by either requesting those same documents and seeing whether we would be charged a price, or paying. You know, I can't remember what the money involved was, but it might be convenient. If some are not available because they are part of executive session, then fine, so be it. I'm not going to challenge it myself and want to go to the Attorney General, but I'd be willing to pay $1,000 or $2,000 to get this issue resolved. So I guess I'm going to withdraw my motion, but I am putting forth this concept of pay to play.
Okay. I guess we'll move on. Oh, yes, Chris.
Sorry, I mean, it's normal when you make a Freedom of Information Act request or another request for public documents for the public agency to be able to charge for the reasonable cost of reproduction of the documents. So I don't, if that in fact, and I didn't see whatever emails, but if that in fact was said, it's the normal process and it's the normal procedure not to burden the public budget for the request of one or more citizens who want specific items. So I would just suggest that they try and get the money to pay for the cows.
Okay. Deborah, do you have something to say?
Yeah, if I may, with regard to that, and I did read a lot of these emails, one of the things I understood was that the response was not just, we're going to give you a reasonable charge for copying, which I agree is normal and usually runs, 25 cents or so a page, but that also there was going to be a substantial charge for counsel to review every document, which I think is an undue burden. If the documents are public record, they're public record, and it doesn't matter if counsel's going to think there's some horse cut out of the barn. So I think that that's where this issue came from. Now, I don't think that we ought to be paying for the documents. I think if we request them, that brings it close enough.
Okay, we're wandering off the topic on the agenda, which is the proposed resolution from Delegate Carroll. So she withdrew it. That's what I mean. It's gone. So right now we got to move right on to the next one, which is proposed resolution from Delegate Kunis. Leo?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it necessary for me to read this entire document, or shall I just go right to the resolution for the record?
Well,
I can give you a copy right now. I just want to make sure that the gentleman doing the minutes will get a hard copy so he can put it into the minutes, as opposed to me reading it. Yeah, I'm just going to read the last paragraph. I won't go through all the whereases. Be it resolved, the Speaker to create a subcommittee to address the concerns stated above in order to facilitate an understanding of the relationship between Cape Light Compact, Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative, and the Barnstable County Administration. The subcommittee shall ask these boards, CLC and CVEC, to educate the Assembly and the public as to their owning authorities, structure, policies, and procedures, if they feel it necessary. The subcommittee shall conclude with a report to the full Assembly as to their findings and suggested actions to be taken, if any. Respectfully submitted, Lip Kunis. Under discussion, Mr. Speaker?
Yep.
I think that some of the questions that were just bandied back and forth in regards to the open meeting law and the supposed price for some documents is certainly something that this committee should look into. We've heard some outrageous figures, and I think this committee would be very diligent in working towards finding out the exact answers and hopefully resolving that one issue, if not many others which have been raised. The reason why I really would like to see a subcommittee formed, or really the main reason why, is because of the makeup of the way the Assembly operates here. I mean, we have a posted agenda, we have a committee of the whole meeting, and then we go into which is the Assembly convenes. And there's very little ability for the public to interact. Not only that, if we in fact were just to have these two organizations organizations come here and do a PowerPoint. There is always that feeling that a question that you're going to ask may be outside of the posted agenda, or they may not have the necessary stuff with them, so what we're going to do is ask them to come back again. I can't stress enough that I feel that, you know, we of the Assembly of Delegates are basically the legislative body of the county government. We've been asked to look into, make some inquiries. I think this is the simplest, easiest, and cleanest way of doing it. A subcommittee can operate with the public input. I take exception with people thinking that a subcommittee are going to allow 5,000 members of the public to come and banter them. I've sat on many subcommittees, and that has never been the case. Even through the Cape Cod Commission too, which, believe me, there's a lot of people in the public show up to those. And certainly for the statement to be made that the creating of this committee will somehow compromise the ability to act, and I quote that, I think is absolutely ridiculous. We are basically a body voted by citizens to act on their behalf, and I believe this is the correct way for us to act. And that if it in all way, manner, or fashion somehow compromises the ability of some other county organization to act, then you know what? Rightly so, because the people want to know. And I believe that this is the best and cleanest way to do it. I will mention that in my whereases, I did mention that the Assembly did, at a meeting of July 6th, vote to create a subcommittee, but that was deemed invalid by County Council because it did not receive the 50.1% votes. I included that in there only to hopefully tie this minutes of this meeting and the minutes of that July 4th meeting together to, if anybody 100 years from now tries to find out what we did, that they'll understand what happened. I hope you support it so we can move forward on this. Thank you.
Okay, is it going to move to put on the table then?
Oh, yes. I make a motion that we, and it's not a proposed resolution number 11. Should I have a number on this?
Yeah, I'm going to call it 1104.
Proposed resolution 11-04.
Do I have a second on that?
Yes.
Okay, move in second.
I have a question for Leo. Leo, on the be resolved, yada, yada, yada. The next to last sentence you say, if they feel it is necessary. If who feels it is necessary? The subcommittee,
Absolutely, subcommittee.
Oh, okay.
I tried to word it, and I had some people also review it to make sure it was worded clearly, but it's my intention that the subcommittee, if they feel there is some necessary action to be taken, they will bring that, suggestions of that action to the full assembly for us to either take action or not.
Yeah, I was just a little confused as to, if you're leaving the door open to CLC and CVEC to say, hey, we don't think it's necessary. That was my only concern.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Kukunis, I would simply suggest that perhaps a small amendment to your resolution might be in order, where it says the subcommittee shall ask these boards to educate the assembly. I thought it might be helpful, since you indicated in your narrative that you expected that they might have the right to request some documents, that you add the words, the subcommittee shall make such public record requests as it deems necessary, and ask these boards to educate the assembly. So I would make that as a motion to amend.
I would second that amendment.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor. We're going to have to limit our discussion right now to the amendment. Do we have any discussion on the amendment of Mr. Kunis's resolution? Hearing none. All those in favor of the amendment to the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. When do we take it? Both.
Richard Anderson?
Yes.
Cheryl Andrews?
Yes.
Sorry again, I didn't hear. Yes. Ronald Bergstrom?
Yes.
Leo Kukunis?
Yes.
Christopher Kanega?
Yes.
James Killian?
Yes.
Marcia King?
No.
Tom Lynch?
No.
Teresa Martin?
Yes.
Deborah McCutcheon?
Yes.
Spiro Mitrakostas?
No.
Paul Pilcher?
Yes.
Anthony Scalise?
No.
Julia Taylor?
Yes.
Just a minute, please. Mr. Speaker, the amendment passes with 50.44% of the delegates voting yes, 42.98% voting no, 6.58% absent.
Don't ever put down the ability of poor work, and it's 0.9%. Mr. Speaker. All right, so now we have the amended motion, the amended resolution on the floor. Do we have discussions, Paul?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just say that it seems to me, and I've been at this perhaps longer than any member of the Assembly because these discussions were happening in Wellfleet before they came here, that we have members of the public who have asked some questions. I don't necessarily always approve of their strategy or their tactics, but they've asked some reasonable questions and they haven't been given the answers. I think they deserve the answers. I think they deserve the documents within reason. And I think that this subcommittee is the way to get at that information so that we are satisfied that if there are reasonable questions, have been given reasonable and full information. I'm not interested in going on a witch hunt or investigation, but I think that this has gone on long enough and that this subcommittee is the way to resolve this issue.
Thank you. Spiro, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, thanks. I, however, do feel that the whereases are important. And in the third clause of the proposed resolution, we make reference to previous vote and action by the Assembly, which here is characterized as having been deemed invalid. In fact, had we been correct in our procedures on that day, the motion would have been defeated. And we may not even be finding ourselves in this place at this time. So I would prefer not to have this clause in this resolution. I'll allow the delegate from Harwich to amend it if he so fit, but otherwise I intend to vote against the resolution.
Okay. Leo?
Specifically on the clause that is in question, I would like to read the whole thing. It says, the Assembly delegates at a meeting of July 6, 2011 voted on a motion to create a subcommittee to address, and in quotes, address the concerns raised by the public, end of quote. However, that action was deemed invalid by County Council in that it did not receive 50.01% of the population of the Barnstable County, but only simple majority of those whom voted. That is a true fact statement of what happened.
Okay, well.
I am not going to ask that it be removed because that is what happened. We as an Assembly voted it. The Speaker deemed it a valid vote. County Council said it was invalid. So there's nothing in that paragraph that I think warrants it to be removed. It's a very simple, honest, and exactly what happened paragraph. That's why I put it in there.
Is there any other comments here? Tom?
Yeah, I think this is a very dangerous path for the Assembly to be going down. We have not even asked CVEC or Cape Light Compact to come in and speak to us. When the delegate, when the representative from Yarmouth spoke, she was making sense about the way they operate. I'd like to hear all of them if they want to come in and do that. For us to suddenly be bringing in what I think is a very strong mandate that we think something's wrong and we want to look into it. And citizens have asked questions. Well, there are a lot of ways for citizens to get answers. And I'd like to have CVEC sit in front of me and CLC and say, why haven't you given them the answers? And let them explain that. And instead, what we're doing is we're ready to go ahead with an inquiry right away. I just heard one of the speakers say, had a whole list of, we haven't asked this, we haven't asked that. And I believe one of the things they said was, we haven't asked to stop the Brewster project. We haven't asked to try to control Brewster. Well, look at the resolution that came before us. They asked to stop the Brewster project. They said, you know, we believe that the county commissioners should express its opposition to any effort to appeal the DPW, by CVEC, to appeal the DPW. I mean, and then they mention another paragraph. So I'm hearing they're saying one thing, and then I'm reading something else. So I'm a person who would much rather be able to ask CVEC and ask Cape Light Compact about what they did. I'm sorry that the delegate from Falmouth withdrew her resolution. I thought that was a reasonable approach for this deliberative body to go. We're a legislative body. We work on policy. We're not the executive branch to run these agencies. We shouldn't be running them. I always get nervous when legislative bodies are dipping into that executive branch and we're going to tell them what to do. That's not our role. And we want this subcommittee to do an inquiry. You're not telling them what to do. You want to inquire. And then that inquiry is going to be a probe. And you don't know where it's going to go. And I would much rather get information from the agencies that we oversee and be on a much more collegial forum, have a much more collegial forum, than feel like we're going to go into them and we're going to find out what's going on here. And I think it's a dangerous road for this assembly to go down, and I'll be voting against this resolution.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Tony?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I agree with Tom. I had my hand up, and I want to talk face to face with these people. I don't want a subcommittee. We've been dealing with this for a while now, and the point that Tom made about the resolution that was presented to the commissioners this afternoon does directly impact my town. I would like to have those people sitting here face to face, as Tom said, so that I can ask them the questions that I have that refer to my town. I will not support this, not at all. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to say that we did, as Leo put into his resolution, we did have a meeting on July 6th. We did have a vote on this. It was later deemed invalid by county council, and I don't want to get into this, but the fact is the county council's opinion, which is supported by the charter, runs counter to the way this body has done business since its inception. So it was quite a ruling. But the fact is, so when that happened, and there were some objections to the procedure, and there was some objections to the vote, and so I decided to go back and saying, what is our purpose? What is our our role in this? In other words, let's go back to our specific role in it, rather than have everybody say, well, we should look into this, or we should do that, or we should do that. So we went back to the charter. I had the clerk go into the charter, and this is what the charter says. The Assembly of Delegates may at any time, upon a request filed by any of its members, request a report on any aspect of Cape Cod regional government by making such a request in writing to the Board of Regional Commissioners. So the people who wrote the charter anticipated that we would look into some of the affairs of county government, and they put specific language in the charter as a vehicle by which we should do that. It then later on says, the Assembly of Delegates may summon witnesses to attend and to testify and to produce books and papers at a hearing before it or a special committee of the Assembly of Delegates in the same manner and with the same penalties as it provided for other multiple bodies by sections 8 to 11 inclusive of chapter 233 of the general laws. Now, I have no idea what those chapters say. I mean, but they must say something. But anyway, what it's saying is here, we're governed by a certain structure, and we have now tried to bring this process back to that structure and decide with the resolution, this resolution, which is more specific than general. In other words, we want to know exactly what we're doing rather than to say, well, we'll just go there and do anything we want. So I think if we are to look into this, I know that the delegate from Barnstable and others are concerned that somehow this is going to be entitled an inquisition, but to me, we're simply doing due diligence to the process that's set up in the charter by the way we look into aspects of county government. I mean, no one would be objecting if we asked, let's say, AmeriCorps to come in here and say, geez, we'd like to know what you're doing. So I think that I also have to say that I feel very guilty about this because it's been going on for months, and I really don't know a lot of the answers, and I don't know a lot of the structure, how these things work. I've looked into, for instance, in renewable energy credits or whatever they're called. I'm going to put some, what do you call it, solar panels on my roof. There's going to be renewable energy credits. Do people know the renewable energy credits are bought and sold on the market, that they have a value? And that depending on who has it, if you have them, they're of a value to you. Well, who gets them? Who sells them? Who do we sell them to? Do we know, for instance, that the Cape Light Compact has to go out onto the market and buy these? Because the Cape Light Compact is a supplier of electricity. They have an obligation to have 3.5% or thereabouts of their electricity produced in renewable resources, so they go out and they on the market and buy them. And who do they buy them from? Who captures these renewable energy credits? So it's a big educational process, which I think goes along with us as a county organization looking into this. And I have to say, quite frankly, that I think the issue has been blurred by the request by members of the public to say, we want answers and we can't get them, so we're going to get them through you. Whatever the Assembly does is what the Assembly does, all right? We're not doing this for anybody else, all right? We make our own rules and we make our own decisions and we decide what we want to act on and what we want to investigate, and certainly any member of the public has the right to contact their delegate or any delegate and say, geez, I hope you ask this or I hope you get into that. But as far as what this resolution says, and I think Leo's made it clear, simply we're looking into it and we want to know what's going on. We want to know what's going on. We want to know how this works. So I know I was kind of wordy, but that's where I am. Leo.
I think the delegate from Barnstable and I actually want the same thing. I just really feel that a committee atmosphere is not an inquiry. It's not an inquest. It's not 18 people sitting in this upper level desk looking down at someone sitting at that table and requesting that they put forward this PowerPoint and be subject to our direct questions. Quite frankly, if I was given the opportunity to either appear in front of the full assembly or appear in front of a subcommittee for the same purpose, inquiring about the operation of my farm, I'd rather go to in front of a subcommittee. I think it's just I look at it exactly opposite as the delegate from Barnstable does. I look at it as more of a lax, more of a open forum, more of a question and answer forum, as opposed to us as the full assembly asking these organizations to come before us. I take that as an inquisition. I see that as a strong-handed answer to a very simple question. I'm really hoping that people rethink this. I think the subcommittee forum is really where this ought to be. And I think everyone on this board wants to pursue this. I just think the only thing we differ in is whether it be done by the full assembly or by a committee. And I really strongly think that the committee is the way to go. And I'm hoping that if this does pass, that the delegate from Barnstable will be the first one to put his name up for the subcommittee.
I've already said no to that.
Okay, do we have yes, Teresa.
I just want to say the only reason I support this is that I hope that the organizations will see it as an opportunity to proactively use it as a platform for direct and specific communication, and that it remains focused on the operational questions of how these organizations work, and it does not segue into some kind of a discussion about pros or cons of credits or sources of power, because that's irrelevant. And I don't think it's a bad thing if we look at these organizations and move on and ask the same thing of AmeriCorps, and ask the same thing of the EDC, and ask the same thing of a whole laundry list of organizations that the county has some representation on. I think it's important to understand how these organizations work and provide a fair eye on each and every one of them, not singling out any of them. And that all the organizations should have proactive communication policies, because that's how you're able to function and get to your end goal by telling people what it is and how you operate. And if the subcommittee can be focused and keep the conversation on topic, it could be a very useful tool for all parties involved. And that is the only reason I support it, not because I think there's anything hidden, and it seems the only form that it's going to come together in. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh, yeah, okay, well, we'll take a vote on this, unless there's nothing else. We'll call the roll.
Richard Anderson?
Yes.
Cheryl Andrews?
Yes.
Ronald Bergstrom?
Yes.
Leo Kukunis?
Yes.
Christopher Kanega?
Yes.
James Killian?
Yes.
Marcia King?
No.
Thomas Lynch?
No.
Teresa Martin? Deborah McCutcheon?
Yes.
Spiro Mitrakostas?
No.
Paul Pilcher?
Yes.
Anthony Scalise?
No.
Julia Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Kukunis's proposed resolution 1104, including the amendment, passes yes with 50.44% of the delegates voting yes, 42.98% voting no, 6.58% absent.
Well, it wasn't quite as bad as raising the debt ceiling, but we was a little closer, yeah. All right, well, I will appoint a balanced committee on that, probably live with a limited number of, I'm thinking of Leo, but I'm also thinking of John, who has been a critic, but we'll see if people are willing to serve, and I'll try to get that going. Sure.
Having them give you the authority to sign it once it's, so it doesn't have to come back for another vote, so you can sign it.
Oh, I can sign it right now.
No, it's not ready now, I've got to do the, I've got to include the
Oh, I can
amendment.
sign it, yeah. I'll sign it. Anyway, where are we? Reports from committees. We don't have any committees, no. Reports from clerk. We can't rule on the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting because we don't have a quorum of people who are present. So is there anything else from the clerk?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Again, I want to remind the delegates that the co-op extension tour will be taking place on Wednesday, August 17th. I currently have one delegate that has committed. This is last call. I need to let Bill Clark know by tomorrow if anyone else wishes to attend, so would you please let me know either first thing tomorrow morning or before you leave this evening. In addition, I also want to let you know that I received correspondence in the mail regarding the 11th Annual Children's Cove Conference on Child Sexual Abuse, scheduled for September 15th and 16th. I've also received notification with regards to the Association to Preserve Cape Cod's 2011 annual meeting to take place Wednesday, August 24th. If anyone desires additional information with regards to attendance, etc., please see me after the meeting. That's it, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Is there any other business to be brought before the Assembly?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? It's a wrap.